Today we're going to talk about grid drawing, and this week we're going to develop our ability to use a grid. A grid in drawing is what we use to draw things as accurate as possible. It's very similar to the game of Battleship, where you have a bunch of squares and letters and numbers, and you're using those to draw a specific square one piece at a time so that the drawing isn't too hard. Some of the vocabulary we're going to talk about today is the word grid, scale, and proportion. A grid is basically when we have a series of lines that make squares of even size. When we talk about scale, it's how two different objects are related based on size, and proportion is that principle of design that we've talked about, and it helps us compare two parts of one large piece. As an overview, these are the 5 steps that we're going to talk about. You're going to gather your materials, choose an image, draw a grid on your image, draw a grid on your blank paper, and then you're going to transfer your drawing using a grid. So I'm going to use these steps on the back side. Those steps are there for you on the front and back of this paper to help you along. I'm going to use my pencil and my ruler. So I already have my materials gathered. So step 1 is already done. Step 2 is also done because I ask you to choose your image. For this particular activity, we're using this image of the Apple logo. So I've already provided the image. So we're moving to step 3. We're going to create a grid on this image. First, you have to lay your image in front of you. Then, step 2, you have to line your ruler up with the left side of your image. So this is the left. I need to line my ruler up right here. So I'm gonna do that. And I'm actually lining up both the left side and the bottom because I have a ruler that is a right angle. Trying to get it as perfectly matched up in this corner and on this line and this line as possible. So now I'm going to draw a small mark along the left side at every 1 inch mark. The inch mark is going to be those lines that are the longest. So I'm going to go to my ruler and I'm making sure that I'm looking directly down. So I'm standing up above my ruler and I'm putting a little mark at every inch. At the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and the 7. Okay, so now I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to take my ruler and line up my ruler with the top border of my paper. So I'm going to turn my ruler and I'm going to line it up with the very top, making sure my left side and my top side are now lined up. And again, I'm going to make a tick mark, draw a little mark at every inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, now I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna turn my ruler back this way, and I'm gonna slide my ruler all the way to this side because I wanna use the same side of my ruler to measure both edges. I'm lining up my ruler with the right edge of my drawing. Make a mark at every inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is going to be in that corner. Turn my ruler back to how I had it earlier for the top, and I'm actually going to slide it down to the bottom this time. Line up my ruler with my paper and make a mark at every inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 will be the border. Now I'm going to use my ruler to draw a line over my image to connect each mark at every inch on the opposite side of the paper. So I'm going to line my ruler up, and I have a mark right here and another mark right here, directly opposite sides. Line my ruler up as perfect as I can, hold it down, draw a light line, and I'm going to repeat that process for every set of mark. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 lines, so that tells me I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 inches, which means this image is 7 by 7 inches. Now I'm going to do the same steps from left to right. I'm going to line up those little marks I drew and draw a line lightly to connect them on opposite sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my last line, 6. When you're done, take a look at your grid. You'll know you made a mistake if something just doesn't look right. In my opinion, I think this grid looks good. Every box looks like the same size. These are all 1 by 1 inch boxes. It's a 7 by 7 inch grid. To help me out a little later, I'm gonna now label it. My top row from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have 7 columns going from top to bottom. On the left side, I'm going to label each row a letter starting with A. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm done with this paper, so now my next step is to do the same process I did for everything here on a blank sheet of paper. So set this aside, grab your blank sheet of paper. The first thing I need to do is make a 7 by 7 inch box. We have right angle rulers. These become really helpful. So what you do is lay it down, and then you're gonna go to draw a line from your 7 up here, all the way to the corner, and all the way down to your 7 right here. I'm starting and stopping my lines on those really, really long lines that mark the 7 inch. Okay, so let's start at the top, all the way to the corner, all the way down to 7. And I already have half of my square done. So I'm gonna take my ruler, turn it all the way around, and I'm gonna make sure that I can line up this mark and this mark on those same 7 inch marks on my ruler. Okay, if you look really carefully, there's a little tiny spot of my line peeking through on both sides. And I'm gonna connect them by drawing a line from 7 to 7. And now I have a perfect right angle 7 by 7 inch square. I'm gonna line my ruler up with the left side. I'm gonna mark my box at every 1 inch. I'm gonna slide my ruler to the right because I'm measuring with the same edge of my ruler. Mark every inch. Turn your ruler, line it up with the top edge. Mark every inch. Slide it down, line it up with the bottom of your image. Mark every inch. You have your marks. Now take your ruler, draw a line to connect the marks on opposite sides. You want to draw lightly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Line up your ruler horizontally and connect your marks on opposite sides again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Double check your grid. Look to see if it looks weird. To me, this grid looks good, which means I have a 7 by 7 inch grid. Each box is 1 by 1 inch. I'm gonna do the same thing I did here, and I'm gonna label my top row in numbers 1 through 7, and I'm gonna label my column from top to bottom A through G. Exactly the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is where it's really, really similar to the game of Battleship. In Battleship, you choose a number and a column of your opponent. You can't see their side, and you try to sink their battleship. For grid drawing, what I do, if I want to draw accurately, I choose a number and a letter to pick a square. For example, if I said A4, I would go to A, slide all the way over to 4, and I'd be choosing this square. If I choose A4 on my printed picture, there's nothing there, so I don't need to draw anything in that box. But if I go to A5 on my drawing, there's a small piece of my leaf. So I'm gonna go to my drawing on A5, A5, and I'm gonna try to copy just that one square. So we're thinking about where that leaf is, and I'm gonna try to copy just that square. And then from there on, you can choose each box that has something in it. The next one I would say is gonna be B5. So I go to B5, look at where my shape is connecting, finish off that leaf. Looks like we can go to B4, B4, and if your shape is a little weird, now is where you would go back and try to erase anything that looks wrong and maybe smooth out those edges, because now you know that's where your line needs to be. And you continue with this drawing. Next one I'm going to choose is C2. C2. And then C3. And then C4. And then C5. And then C6. And then D6. And then E6. And then F6. You'll notice it looks a little off right here, so this is where I would come back, do a little bit of erasing, and try to make that nice and smooth. I'll come back here a little bit later and make this more round and perfect once I get the full image in there. Next is G6. There's just a little tiny piece in there, but I still want to draw it. And then it looks like I have G5. I am constantly looking back at my regular image to make sure I'm drawing as accurate as I can. G4. G3. F3. F2. E2. And to finish it off, D2. Okay. Now overall, this drawing is pretty accurate if you hold them up side by side, but this is where I want to come in, erase any of these lines that look a little imperfect. And I can still see it a little bit, but now is when I can come in and make it nice and smooth so that I have a perfect drawing that's accurate. Go ahead and finish this activity for today. If you finish early, you can go on to sketch.io or you can free draw. If you have any questions, raise your hand and I'll come and help you out.